Let's work through a few translations that are a little more difficult, still using the same QL language as before. Start with someone is neighbors with everyone. I'll describe two different approaches to translating this. First, you can start from a sentence that's one level less abstract, like James is neighbors with everyone. Translating that's pretty straightforward. You can treat that as for all y, James is neighbors with y. Now go back to someone is neighbors with everyone. That just takes what the previous sentence says about James, and it says that someone meets that condition. When we have a formula that says that a particular named individual like James meets a certain condition, and we want to say instead that at least someone meets that condition, then we just existentially quantify on that person's name. So in this case, we would take the claim that James is neighbors with everyone for all y and jy and existentially quantify on j. That takes us from for all y and jy to there is an x such that for all y and xy. Now, instead of saying that James is neighbors with everyone, our formula says that there is some x that is neighbors with everyone. In other words, someone is neighbors with everyone. A second way to get a translation is to progressively rephrase the original sentence so that it gets closer and closer to how we have to say things in a QL language. So first, rephrase someone is neighbors with everyone to there is some x such that x is neighbors with everyone. Now work on x is neighbors with everyone. You have to be a bit careful here. You can't reword that as for all x, x is neighbors with x, because that says that everyone is neighbors with themselves, which isn't what we want. So we have to rephrase it as for all y, x is neighbors with y. That gives us there is an x such that for all y and xy as the full translation. Next, no toddler is friends with every toddler who likes pizza. This can be seen as a statement of the form no f is g. It's saying that no toddler, that's the condition f in this example, is friends with every toddler who likes pizza. That's the condition g in this case. In general, there are two ways to deal with statements of the form no f is g. The first is to rephrase it to it's not true that there exists an f that is also g. The second is to rephrase it to every f is such that it fails to be g. Let's try the first way first. So we'll rephrase the original sentence to it's not true that there exists a toddler that is friends with every toddler who likes pizza. Now we translate there exists a toddler who is friends with every toddler who likes pizza, and then we just negate that. We can rephrase that sentence to there is some x such that x is a toddler and x is friends with every toddler who likes pizza. Now the only hard part left is dealing with x is friends with every toddler who likes pizza. That can be restated as every toddler who likes pizza is such that x is friends with them. And that's a statement of the form every f is g. It's saying that everyone who meets the condition of being a toddler that likes pizza, that's the condition f in this case, meets the further condition that x is friends with them. That's the condition g in this case. To translate a claim of the form every f is g, we reconceptualize it as everything is such that if it's f, then it's g. So we see this claim as saying everyone is such that if they are a toddler who likes pizza, then x is friends with them. And that, in turn, can be rephrased as for each thing y, if y is a toddler who likes pizza, then x is friends with y. And y is a toddler who likes pizza just becomes y is a toddler and y likes pizza. So ultimately, we end up at the paraphrase, it's not the case that there is some x such that x is a toddler, and for each thing y, if y is a toddler and y likes pizza, then x is friends with y. That gives us the formula, it's not the case that there is an x such that tx, and for all y, if ty and py, then fxy. The second way to translate the original sentence is to use the strategy where we treat a no f is g statement as saying that every f fails to be g. That means turning no toddler is friends with every toddler who likes pizza into every toddler is such that it's not true that they are friends with every toddler who likes pizza. That itself can be turned into everything X is such that if X is a toddler, then it's not true that X is friends with every toddler who likes pizza. And we already dealt with X is friends with every toddler who likes pizza. That becomes, for each thing Y, if Y is a toddler and Y likes pizza, then X is friends with Y. So we end up with the formula for all X. If TX, then not for all Y. If TY and PY, then FXY. That also works as a translation. It's equivalent to the formula we gave earlier. Next, only those who are neighbors with a toddler like pizza. This is of the form only F or G. It says only those who meet the condition of being neighbors with a toddler, that's the condition F in this case, meet the further condition of liking pizza, which is the condition G here. An only F or G statement can be handled in two different ways. We can see it as saying there aren't any non-Fs that are G, or we can see it as saying every G is F. Let's go with the second option. So that means rewording only those who are neighbors with a toddler like pizza as everyone who likes pizza is neighbors with a toddler. And that we can rephrase as every X is such that if X likes pizza, then X is neighbors with a toddler. Now we just have to rephrase X is neighbors with a toddler. That can be reworded as there is a Y such that Y is a toddler and X is neighbors with Y. So we end up with the formula for all X. If PX, then there exists a Y such that TY and NXY. Next, everyone who is friends with all of their neighbors is neighbors with a toddler. This is of the form every F is G. So we rephrase it to everything X is such that if X is friends with all their neighbors, then X is neighbors with a toddler. Now let's work on rephrasing X is friends with all of their neighbors. That can be turned into everyone who is neighbors with X is such that X is friends with them, which is another every F is G type statement. So we can rephrase it as for all Y, if Y is neighbors with X, then X is friends with Y. Now we can rephrase X is neighbors with a toddler. That's just there is a Y such that Y is a toddler and X is neighbors with Y. So we end up with the formula for all X, if for all Y, if NYX, then FXY, then there exists a Y such that TY and NXY. Next, if someone is neighbors with a toddler, then they're friends with that toddler. Here we have to be a bit careful. At first, you might be tempted to see this as a conditional where someone is neighbors with a toddler is the antecedent. And then you might start your translation by rephrasing that to there is some X such that X is neighbors with a toddler, which would then become there is an X such that for some Y, Y is a toddler and X is neighbors with Y. But then as you continue to read the sentence, it says, then they are friends with that toddler. So what the sentence is really saying is just that anyone who's neighbors with a toddler is friends with that very toddler. So actually, this is most naturally seen as a statement of the form every F is G. So we're going to want to translate it using a universal quantifier out front. We should rephrase it to everything X is such that if X is neighbors with a toddler, then X is friends with that toddler. Now we need to rephrase if X is neighbors with a toddler, then X is friends with that toddler. That can be rephrased as every toddler is such that if X is neighbors with them, then X is friends with them. And that, in turn, can be rephrased as for each thing Y, if Y is a toddler, then if X is neighbors with Y, then X is friends with Y. So we end up with the formula for all X, for all Y, if TY, then if NXY, then FXY. Finally, if someone is neighbors with a toddler, then it isn't true that no one has any neighbors. This actually just is a conditional where the antecedent is someone is neighbors with a toddler and the consequent is it isn't true that no one has any neighbors. So we just have to translate those two statements and put an arrow in between. Let's start with someone is neighbors with a toddler. As we've already seen, that's just there is an x such that for some y, ty and nxy. Now, it isn't true that no one has any neighbors. That's just a way of saying that at least someone has at least one neighbor. In other words, there is some x such that x is at least neighbors with someone. That is, there is some x such that for at least some y, nxy. And that completes the translation.